NATO member meeting in Madrid declare the Kremlin a direct threat to their security.
Putin has shattered peace in Europe and attacked the very tenets of rule-based order. The United States and our allies, we're going to step up.
144 Ukrainian soldiers set free in the biggest prisoner swap since the Russian invasion.
The UK pledges £1 billion more military aid for Ukraine on the final day of the NATO summit.
The UK will provide an additional £1 billion in military aid for Ukraine after President Zelensky urged NATO leaders to do more to help the country's war effort.
At the NATO summit in Madrid, the military alliance branded Russia the biggest direct threat to Western security. Our security correspondent, Frank Gardner, has more.
Ukrainian troops on Salisbury Plain, part of an ever-expanding package of assistance Britain's giving to that country as it tries to fight off the invading Russian army. So, this year's summit of NATO leaders in Madrid comes at a time of high tension. The alliance has revamped its strategy towards strongly deterring Russia from making any more land grabs.
Together, our allies, we're going to make sure that NATO is ready to meet threats from all directions across every domain, land, air, and the sea.
Estonia is one of those NATO countries that thinks it could be the next target for Russian aggression. Britain is now increasing its military commitment there. But meanwhile, the war in Ukraine rages on. I asked the Foreign Secretary if she thought it will still be possible to have a realistic peace deal with President Putin.
It's only possible to achieve a lasting peace, first of all, when Russia are pushed out of Ukraine. Secondly, when Russia are held to account for the appalling war crimes that have taken place. And thirdly, when we know that future Russian aggression can be prevented. We must never allow this to happen again, and we must protect the future security of Europe.
This has been very much a NATO summit for hawks. Those pushing for a tougher line against Moscow are largely getting what they wanted to hear. Those with doubts are staying quiet. But the net result is a newly reinvigorated NATO that's putting money and weapons where they're needed on its eastern borders. None of this will exactly please the Kremlin. It's already threatened to retaliate in its own time for Sweden and Finland joining NATO. Moscow has now branded this alliance as aggressive, expansionist and hostile to Russia's interests. Frank Gardner, BBC News, Madrid.
And we'll be talking to the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss at 7:30 later this morning.
Our correspondent Joe Inwood is in Kiev for us this morning. Very good morning to you, Joe. So a lot of talk about the money and extra money, particularly from the UK, has been pledged. Talk to us about what's happening on the ground and what difference this could make.
So we understand from what's been said that these are going to be air defence systems, high-tech equipment, and this is the sort of thing that is needed here. We've seen just over the last few days a number of really terrible missile strikes, one on a shopping centre, one on a residential building yesterday. So anything that's going to help Ukraine secure its skies is going to be very, very much appreciated. But the thing that President Zelensky has always said and keeps saying they really need is heavy artillery. And I think that what they're going to be hoping for is that as well as air defence systems, as well as high-tech radar jamming equipment, that sort of thing, that the flow of heavy artillery continues. Because what we're seeing here is a big artillery battle in the east of this country, and the Russians are still, as I've been saying for many weeks now, the Russians are pushing forward, they are taking ground, and the way they're doing it is by outmatching what the Ukrainians can bring. And so I think what the Ukrainians will say is that, yes, they need air defence systems, they need high-tech equipment, but they also need big guns, and they need them to get to the front as soon as they can.
Joe, can you just give us a thought on the numbers? We know that UK government announcing a further $1 billion for military support. How does that tally up in relation to what President Zelensky says they're spending on a routine basis on fighting the war?
So I think the cost that President Zelensky has put on it is about $4 to $5 billion a month. So obviously, I mean, we're talking huge amounts of money here, and nobody could really question the commitment that the British government have put to this. They are one of the very biggest donors, of course. The United States dwarfs everyone. But they are donating a lot of money, and I think Boris Johnson has been really lauded here as somebody who's pushed this. But in terms of the totals that are being spent and the totals that are needed, it's really not going to fill the gap. And I think there is a real concern here that even with the high levels of funding they're being given, they're still facing a deficit in what they're spending.